In this lesson, we will add data types to the table so that we can store information. Data types include fields, base enums, and extended data types. We will use some of the previously created extended data types along with some new fields to build our tables. So now that we've added two tables to our project and we've set the label property on them, we can begin to add elements, data types, and fields to our table. So currently I have the DB maintenance table opened. Now I can begin adding fields by highlighting the field node and right-clicking, choosing new, and then selecting a data type. We can also drag and drop EDTs, enums, and fields from our project pane onto the table. So for the DB maintenance table, I'm going to add this enumeration of service type. I can simply drag it over to the fields node and it will populate. Now I've added some new fields here simply for the purpose of having more information for our tables. So we walk through the process of creating all these different EDT types and enumerations. I've simply added a few more in here just to make our solution a little more robust. Okay, so for the maintenance table, we're also going to add the string for vehicle ID. This will be our internal identification number for our vehicles. So we want this to be on both tables actually, so we can create a relationship in the future on that field. For the maintenance table, we also want to have our service start and end dates, and those are in our EDT date folder. So I will click the begin date, I'll press Control so I can select the additional service end date, and then I can drag both of them onto the fields for my maintenance table. Okay, and next I want to add the vehicle type enumeration so that I know which type of vehicle is being serviced in my maintenance table. And I'll drag that out there. Okay, so those are the fields we're going to add for the maintenance table. So I'll click over to my DB vehicle table tab and I will add some fields to this. For the DB vehicle, we're going to have a lot of general information about vehicles. So if I go to my EDT strings folder, we have make and model, vehicle ID, and VIN number. And again, I'm holding Control so I can select multiple elements so I can drag them onto my fields node. Okay, now let's go to the EDT integers folder. Here we have an integer type of number of doors. I'll drag that onto my vehicle table. I will also go to the enumerations and drag the drive type field. Then within my dates, I will choose my DB year to indicate which year this vehicle was manufactured. And then we will choose the vehicle type enumeration. We'll drag that out there. Okay, so now I have a handful of fields on both of my tables, and we can begin adding data to the table now. So let's make sure we choose the double disk icon here to save all, which will save the changes that I've just implemented on both of my tables. We mentioned that field groups are logical groupings of physical database fields. AX uses field groups to cluster fields into logical collections so that they may be used with other AX objects, such as forms and reports. An example of a field group is the address group, located in the address field group on the cust table. Some common uses for field groups not only include to organize logical groupings of fields and data, but also to help dynamically update some objects. For example, if a modification is made to a field group, related objects are automatically updated to reflect the new content of the group. So if we have a form that has the address field group on it, and then we modify the address field group on a table to include a new field, for example, PO Box or address line 2, the form with that field group will automatically update to reflect those changes you made in the field group on the table. So adding new fields to a field group can be a powerful technique for updating forms. We will discuss best practice checks for using field groups in the best practices lesson of this module. Okay, so we have our two newly created tables with the fields and data types added to them that we have just done in the previous lesson. And I have the DB maintenance and the DB vehicle table opened up in the element designer, so I can go ahead and begin modifying both of them. So with the DB vehicle table selected and opened, I want to expand my fields node just to take a quick look at the fields that we've added here. So we have a handful of fields to use in this table, and now we want to create a field group. So if I highlight the fields group node, I'll expand it, and here we can see some default field groups that are created each time you create a new table. These are created by default. If I right click the fields group node, I can choose new group to create a custom field group. With the field group 1 highlighted, I'll press F2 so I can name it to my liking, and I'll call this vehicle description. Okay, now we can add fields to this field group in a couple of ways. The easiest way is to go up to our fields here and drag them into it. So I want to choose DB make. I'll hold control so I can select an additional item, which would be DB model and DB year. And I'll go ahead and just drag these down into my newly created vehicle description field group, and they will appear there. Now, another way to add fields to the field group is to simply highlight the field group, right click it, and choose new field. It'll create this blank node here, and then in the properties pane we can choose the data field drop down, which will allow us to choose a field from our table. Okay, so we see some system fields in here like rec ID, and then we see the fields that we've created there. So we can choose any of those fields to add to the field group. For this purpose, I just want these three here, so I'll go ahead and right click this blank field and choose delete. Okay, so we have our vehicle description field group. It's ready for use, and we'll see how that can be beneficial in later lessons when we begin to create forms off of these tables. Okay, so I'll go ahead and choose the double disk to save all of my changes here. And then I would like to perform a database sync. Since we've been creating these different elements and tables, we want to make sure that what we're creating is in sync with the database or added to the database on the back end. So an easy way to do that, we can right click our project and choose properties, and we can have synchronized database and build set to true. This way, every time we perform a build, it will sync our elements with the database. So with my project selected, I'll right click and I'll choose build. Again, we have an output here. It's walking us through the build steps, and we can see that the database sync has completed.